So we were just talking about sex slavery, pornography, and how oftentimes women are kind of either thrust into this or they may choose to go into porn, but then they find that it's degrading or it affects them mentally or physically and all that. But the argument could be made that many porn stars have contracts and they have they are treated quite well.
Yeah.
Obviously, not if they're being kidnapped, but I'm talking about
the other industry, the other part of the industry. Yeah. Sure.
And so you've got these women or men who say, I won't do this, I won't do that, and then their needs are kind of respected, so they in a way do have a lot of control over what they do.
Yeah, well, actually, I just saw a documentary. There are a lot of young people that go into the porn industry for that, and some of the establishments are regulated really well and protected. But the problem is, because of the internet and because of our mobile phones, because of the way we can do our own movies now, a lot of this market is unregulated. That's one side of it too, so you don't have the protection. The other thing is this, which we've forgotten about it. The human heart is desperately sick and wicked. Now, I know that's a Christian answer, but let me explain. The way addiction works is, if I look at normal sex, say a guy lying on top of a girl and having just that type of sex, camera visually going in and having, you're seeing all the parts and all that. After a while, the brain becomes desensitized to that. We become desensitized to it. So we want something that's a little bit more risque, a little bit different. And if you look at the pornography today and you Google the difference between pornography in the 1960s compared to pornography today, my guess is it's so much more perverse. Number one, because it's not as regulated, plus they're trying to find more extremes. One producer said, we've got to keep pushing those boundaries. And the problem is, I can't even say it on camera, but it's becoming so perverse that women are really treated as objects. It works this way. If you don't do the scene, we'll find somebody else that will. So just last night, when I was flicking channels, I heard a lady say, I had to run after the scene, it was so gross, and shower myself, right? Now, that's what they're expecting out of women. So what happens is, think about it, if it's unregulated, because we're desensitized, the way addiction works, we need harder and harder stuff. If you've got an imagination, think about it. They do anything. If you can think about, some people couldn't even think that way because their minds are clean. But if your mind isn't as clean, you can think of so many different perverse things that you could do to a woman or a guy. Well, I'm telling you now, that's being done today. And so what happens is, it's not a safe industry. Psychologically, you can't assume that, okay, if a girl's going to get all this stuff done to her, how could that not affect her psychologically? How is she going to see men? How is she going to view the character of men? How is she going to view sexuality? How is she going to view her own self-image and her self-esteem? There's no way in hell, I don't care what they say in camera, they can go through such perverse things and live a normal life. It just simply ain't going to happen. Because inherently we've got a conscience. There's something in us that's been given to us, I believe, by God, where we, even though it's been seared and damaged, that we know right and wrong. And when a woman is subjected to such perverse things, it affects her psychologically. Men tend to be different. Psychologically, maybe they just see it as sex and they're conquerors. But even listening to a man on a documentary who was a porn star, who's still a porn star, how it has affected him emotionally over those years. He just wants to have a normal relationship. He simply can't have a normal relationship anymore. And he doesn't know the difference between being in love and not being in love. Is he just being used for his body, or is it, he just, he's in that. So I would say maybe in the 1960s, when porn first started, it was regulated, and sure, there was some perverse things there, but like I said before, they were superstars and it was run really well. And there's I can't think of the name now, but there's an industry in America, one of the biggest porn things, but they make DVDs, and there are people that are guarded and protected in that environment, but they're realizing that people aren't buying as much because it's not perverse enough. It's the way that the brain works. We have our own endogenous chemicals in our brain that are like drugs that give us a high, like dopamine. When we view an image, we get a dopamine rush, but eventually the brain won't react to the same image. It needs something more, harder, to have that same reaction. It's the same with drugs. And that's the great danger. So what producers are now doing is they're pushing that benchmark, they're pushing that boundary of how more perverse can we get. And that just tells me how desperately sick we are as a human race. What you're doing is you're saying to these women, you know what? Here's an industry that you can get good money. Let's use your body and objectify your body just so we can get the money. And because of the heart of man, the woman says, you know what? I can make a career out of this. I can get money. I can make a stack of money and then I'll get out of the industry. Well, YouTube, the documentaries about people that have got out of that industry. I just watched one recently, Life After Porn. And what, out of 10 people, one of them said it didn't do anything to me, but 9 of them destroyed their lives. Young girls get in this industry thinking that somehow they're gonna, because they love sex or they want money or whatever it is, but in reality it affects them, and there's huge consequences, not only for them short term but long term as well. What happens when they get a family and they're recognized? Because people aren't starting with the end in mind, they're thinking about the now. I need the money, I need to satisfy my sexual desires. There's nothing good about pornography.